Writing a story in just 6 words, making it powerful, making it moving, and having someone love it. Is it even possible to write a story in 6 words? We're going to find out, and we're starting right now. Everybody dreams of writing their own epic novel, 1,000 pages, making it moving, powerful, making people feel emotions and crying and laughing. But do you really have to write a 1,000-page epic novel to move someone? Is it possible to write a short story? Is it possible to write even shorter? Is it possible to tell a story in just 6 words? Does that sound impossible? Well, Ernest Hemingway successfully did tell a story in just 6 words when he wrote the story, Baby Shoes for Sale, Never Worn. Just 6 powerful words, and they move you. Because in just those 6 words, Ernest Hemingway did something that all novels are supposed to do. They paint a picture in your mind. You feel. Because when you read a story in which you don't feel, it's like reading a newspaper. Nobody cares. The information's there. It's like reading a phone book. You read it, but it doesn't move you. But a successful story should move you. It should feel powerful. And Ernest Hemingway achieved this with just 6 words by telling us baby shoes. Right off the bat, you can see it. For a sale, never worn. Those last 2 words are very powerful. You can't help but wonder who, what, when, why. You ask so many questions when you hear those 6 words. You can see it in your mind, you can feel it, and it stays with you. You can't help but wonder, who were the parents? Why are they selling baby shoes? Why are the shoes never worn? You can't help but have that story stay in your mind. And that, as a writer, is what you want. You want people to feel. You want people to think. You want people to be able to see your novel in their mind. And that is what Ernest Hemingway did with just those 6 words. One of the things as a writer is you don't want to have to fill your novel with too much information, where you're giving the reader every little tiny bit of detail that stops them from daydreaming. Because one of the best things that you can do as a writer is to hold back some information and allow the reader to fill in the rest. You give them a touch of information, and it is the reader who fills in the rest with their own imagination. Because some writers will fill their books with way too much information, right down to the small little detail. And it just takes the reader out of the story, because now the reader can't use their own imagination. And as a writer, that's what you're after. And with those 6 words of Ernest Hemingway, you can't help but use your imagination. You fill in with so much detail that wasn't given. You want answers to your questions, and that story stays in your mind. So as a writer, when you're writing your novel, you want to make sure that you don't give too much. You want to give just enough that lets the reader take over with their own imagination, because that is where the story can really take off, inside someone's mind. Because 2 people can read your story and see 2 completely different things in their mind. Like Ernest Hemingway said, a story is like an iceberg. Just the tip of it is above the water, but the rest of it is under the water. And that is where the reader's imagination takes over. Sometimes a reader's imagination is greater than anything you could have ever come up with. So don't fill in your book with too much information. Let the reader's imagination take over, and you would be amazed at how great that story could turn out. Better than anything you could have written. Readers want to feel. That is what draws them to a book. They want to learn about themselves. They want to learn about life. And as a writer, your job is to create a story in which the reader is going to question life, question themselves. Your job is to show them the road, and the reader wants to walk down that road. There's a reason why we throw away a newspaper after we're finished reading it. because it holds no emotional connection to us. But as a writer, you want to create a book that is going to connect with people emotionally. That is the book that they're going to read over and over again and keep close to them for decades on end and hand it down to their children. Ask any painter, and they will tell you one of the hardest things to do is to know when to stop painting, when to stop adding to the artwork itself. Sometimes as a painter, you have to know when to step back and let simplicity take over. As a writer, you have to do the same thing. You have to know when to make a story 200 pages and not 3, 500 pages and not 6, and 500 pages and not 1,000. Or you can make a story 6 words. The question is, how do you know when to stop? That is the trickiest part of being a writer. Ernest Hemingway could have taken that story, that is 6 words, and he could have made it 1,000 words. He could have made it 1,000 pages. But he chose to stop with just 6 words. Because as a writer and as a painter, one of the hardest things you will ever do is knowing when to stop, when to step away, and leaving a lot of information left out. Knowing that the reader will fill it in with their mind and their emotions greater than anything you could have ever written. Your job as a writer is to create a story that will stay in people's minds long after they have finished reading. It's like giving a speech. Sometimes you have to know when to hold back on a speech. You don't want to drag a speech on for hours on end because people won't remember what you're saying. Even Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, and it was less than 20 minutes of a speech. And when he was asked why it was so short, he said he wanted people to remember it. He knew that if he had gone on for 4 or 5 hours, nobody would have remembered a word he said. But because he kept it so short, it stayed in people's minds. And as a writer, you want to make sure your story and the flow of your story from Act 1, 2, and 3 stays in people's minds. And one of the best ways to do it is by keeping your story short. The question is, how short? How long can the story be? This is a tricky thing as a writer. You don't want to flood your story with so much that the story is forgettable. You want to have it just short enough where there is enough information to make the reader think and feel, but at the same time, you don't flood it to a point where they forget it. You want to have that story short enough that it stays in people's minds and hearts forever. As a writer, you know everything comes down to that last line, that last paragraph. It is what people are going to remember. If the ending of your novel is weak, then it will judge your entire novel as weak. But if your last line is powerful, then people are going to judge your entire book as powerful. Ernest Hemingway knew this when writing A Farewell to Arms. He wrote the last line 46 times before he settled on something that he was happy with. There were many times he could have stopped, and it would have been weak. But because he dedicated himself to writing a powerful last line, it made the story powerful. As a writer, when you look at Baby Shoes Never Worn, Baby Shoes for Sale Never Worn, it is that last line of never worn that really makes you think. The story could have been Baby Shoes for Sale. I had too many and just wanted to get rid of extra. Would that have been powerful? Not really. The story could have been Baby Shoes have been worn. Baby has gotten older, looking to sell them. That wouldn't have been powerful. But the story saying Baby Shoes for Sale Never Worn, that makes us wonder. That makes us think. Those last 2 words really stick in our minds. As a writer, it doesn't matter if you're writing 6 words or a 1,000-page novel. You want to make sure that that last line, that last paragraph, is what's going to stick in people's minds and move them, make them think, make them feel. And as a writer, you want to make sure that you get out early. You don't want to hit someone with a very powerful last line and then start adding 4 or 5 more chapters. Sometimes you got to know when to stop writing. You come up with that last powerful line and you got to stop, step back, and leave it as is. because that last line is what's going to stick in people's minds. But if you add 4 or 5 extra chapters, it might dilute it and people forget the novel altogether. Always remember, you don't necessarily have to write a 1,000-page epic to move people. You can write a short story. You can even write 6 words and have it just as powerful as a 1,000-page book. As long as you're making people see, they can see it in their minds, you're making people think, you're making people feel. That is what's going to make the story successful. You don't have to add thousands of pages to make a story great. You can write something as simple as 6 words and make it just as powerful as 1,000, as long as the reader is feeling while they are reading. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out my website. I'll leave a link in the description down below where you can check out my website and read countless blogs that will teach you how to become the greatest writer you can be. Because that is what I want. I want to help you become successful. I want to see your novel published as fast as possible. And if you like this video, be sure to check out my other video that I have on how to have a perfect ending to your novel. In fact, I'm going to leave a link right here that you can click on it right now and you can start watching that video right away.